Here is another story about how the dark web can get you truly and thoroughly messed up. The story is from a letter written to me by a friend from college, who for the sake of anonymity we will call Ben. The year was 2013, springtime, and I was in my second semester of my second year of college when everything happened. I'll keep my name out of it, even though the letter was sent to me. I also added brackets around details that I personally added for clarity. Dear friend, I hope this letter finds you well and that college is going great too. I'm sorry I haven't written much, but let's just say that my life is screwed. I'm not allowed on any computers right now, and thus the only way I can tell you what happened is to send snail mail. Don't mind that this letter is several pages long, it's just my freaking life story. This is about what happened with that girl I told you I met, Penny. Or at least that's the name she gave me before she ruined my life. I never got a chance to tell you or all of our friends from Intro to Computers class, so if you want to and they still care to hear my side of things, you can share this letter with them when they're not screwing off in the cafe like we all used to. If not, I don't care, as long as someone knows the truth. So, here goes. Penny, as you know, was someone I met at the college campus cafe about a month ago. That truthfully wasn't the first place we met, even though I never told you guys that. But since she was new to me and potentially a newbie to our friend group, I thought it would be easier to just say that she and I met on campus. In all honesty, we actually met at a public cafe when I went to go do some more work on our class project. The computers were occupied, and this black-haired, green-eyed hottie said I could just use the station that she was at because she was about to leave. You saw her. She was gorgeous, like some anime chick or something, so you can imagine how a dumbass like me fell for her. But anyway, I sat down to use her station and started asking about her. You know, trying to spit game and see if I could score a number or some adult time from her. She didn't give me too much play, but she did give me her name and her email, and then left the cafe. A few minutes later, one of the cafe managers and 2 police officers came over to me at the computer terminal and asked me what I was doing there, and why I hadn't checked in at the front desk to use a computer. Who the hell knew you had to do that? I see people sit down at computers there all the time, especially if they don't have a laptop or something, and I didn't at the time. I basically told the manager and officers that I just saw an open computer and jumped on because the place was busy, and I had work to do for class. They asked me if I saw who was sitting there before, and I said no, thinking I was protecting this girl from whatever was going on. I didn't really care to know why they were after her, and they didn't tell me anything about why they wanted to know, but they did tell me that I had to get off the computer, and then they shut it down, unplugged it, and the manager marked it as out of service. I thought that was the end of the situation, and in the end, all I got from the girl was her email and the name Penny, so I wrote it off. I didn't know that I would see her on campus, and that was a huge shocker, but she did run into me at the campus cafe. I assume she was a student because most people on campus during the usual class hours are usually students. But I forgot that random people can use the library and commons or go to the cafe. Whatever. Anyway, she asked what I was studying and I told her about the computer programming classes I take, including our Intro to Computers class shenanigans and whatnot. I'll skip the details and go on to the part where I told her I didn't have a laptop at the time since mine broke, and that's why I was at the cafe that day. I did ask her why she only gave me her email to contact her. She didn't have social media, she explained, and she didn't like giving out her number to random strangers, no matter how cute they are. But since she saw that we were attending the same college, she said it would be fine to give me her number now. We kept up with each other for about a month, and in that time, she did eventually tell me that she was studying cybersecurity and computer forensics. And again, I never really saw her on campus, except for in the cafe. So I never knew her schedule outside of that. I never saw her arrive or leave campus. She was very mysterious, and I kinda liked it. Anyway, on to the issue at hand. The reason that I'm sitting in jail right now. I guess we started dating even though I don't recall ever asking her out formally. She agreed to come over to my apartment once, and things led to other things, and she did surprise me with a gift. I came home after classes once, and saw an unmarked box in front of my door. There was a sticky note on it that said, "For Ben," with a heart on it. So, I assumed it was from Penny, since no one else would have done something like that. In the box was a well-packaged new laptop, that Carbon X1 that you guys saw me using last. Of course, the next time she came over, I thanked her for it, and she helped me set it up, even though I didn't need her help to do so. She was on it for a couple of hours that day, and I remember she did leave soon after she finished setting up the laptop. Then, I didn't see Penny for a week. She wasn't on campus, her phone number was giving me the message that it was disconnected or not in service, and then I tried her email as a last resort. To my surprise, the email was also an account that didn't exist. You remember that Thursday we were playing an Intro to Computers class with the little command wars thing? The day I wrote that command that basically wiped computers clean, and then in a horrible twist of irony, the campus police came to get me out of class and my laptop was confiscated. Yeah, well, I was arrested and turned over to the actual county police department, where they questioned me about the laptop. They asked me where I got the laptop, what I was doing on it, and a crap ton of questions about the dark web marketplaces and stuff that I knew nothing about. According to them, the investigators, who turned out weren't regular police officers, mind you, the laptop was actually a stolen device from a government installation. Sounds far-fetched, I know, but then again, I'm writing to you from behind bars. So let that tell you how true it is, I guess. I didn't want to believe them, but when they told me how they traced the activity on that laptop back to my home IP address, and were planning on slapping a load of felonious charges against me, I finally decided that I would open up and tell them about Penny and how I met her at the off-campus cafe. Again, at the college campus cafe, and how she got me a new laptop as a gift shortly after we started seeing each other. One of the investigators didn't buy it, asking me how I could date a woman and not know her real name, or at least her last name or anything about her. I told him that, again, it was a somewhat new relationship, and that we hadn't spent a lot of time talking about her backstory. Mainly because she seemed more interested in me and my friends, and all of us had nicknames. The other investigator then described a woman to me that sounded a lot like Penny. I told them what I knew, and they told me that her name wasn't actually Penny, and that she was the subject of a national manhunt after a stream of online bank robberies using exploits sold on the dark web to get into secure bank systems, which left all kinds of stolen bank information now sitting on a stolen government laptop in my possession. Basically, they insisted that I give up her location and such, but I told them that I didn't know where she lived or anything about her, except that we went to college together. They told me that was a lie too, since they already looked into the campus security, and though they saw her in the commons on the security camera, no student records for her ever existed. They also questioned me about my majors, my classes, and yes, the prank command scripts I wrote for our games in class. And eventually you can guess the rest. In a nutshell, they were considering me an accomplice, and insisted that I was withholding evidence. I was assigned a public defender who did nothing to help me, except he kept suggesting that I plead guilty and take a plea deal. But I insisted on fighting that I wasn't guilty of the crimes that I was accused of. It was stupid, since The charges were so big, but I didn't want to go down for some person that screwed me literally and figuratively. So now, here I sit, awaiting my next court date. Bail has been denied, and even if it was set, no one's coming to get me out. I miss you guys, and even though this sounds like some twisted dating story gone wild, it's crazy to know that my life was in a roundabout way ruined by the dark web and some girl who spends her time in it. So, that's my story, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to write more or call you guys. Stay safe, stay strong, and if you see Penny again, please call the freaking police. Signed, Ben. We never saw Penny after that, and Ben did eventually lose his case and was convicted of a load of computer crimes. He should be out of prison in 2028. We don't hear from him anymore, and haven't in several years. I wanted to add a couple of additional notes about this story. The first is that we never knew anything about the off-campus coffee shop or what happened with Ben before he introduced us to Penny on campus at the campus cafe. Otherwise, we would have told him to steer clear of her, especially since he mentioned the police showed up right after she left the computer station. We all knew our way around computers being in a class like Intro to Computers, which at the time was a prerequisite class for any course dealing with computers, be it engineering, digital imaging, or anything tech-related on this particular campus. The second thing we wanted to point out is that shortly after Ben was arrested, there was a huge security breach on our campus's computer system, and somewhere near 2,000 students had their tuition money stolen and were unenrolled from their classes. We don't know if it had anything to do with Penny, but come to think of it, I wouldn't be surprised if that's why she was there. I was one of those students whose tuition was stolen. But fortunately, the money stolen wasn't my personal money. Rather, it was a grant that I received that covered my classes for the year. And what was taken was the remainder of the second semester's tuition in my campus account. Classes were smaller than usual that year, and as you probably could imagine, a lot of people transferred out. That campus to this day still has technical issues with their enrollment, and for the sake of avoiding a potential lawsuit, I won't tell you the name of this school or where it is, just that it's a community college. I hope that Penny, or whatever the hell her name is, gets hers for everything she did, if she hasn't already. Hello, Raven. I've only told this story to one other person before, and she didn't seem convinced that this was a real event that could actually happen in the real world. I can't blame her, as I still can't wrap my head around the encounter, no matter how many times I replay it in my mind. Anyway, I was on campus late one night due to a guest speaker running long, and then sticking around to answer questions and chat with the students. If memory serves, the speaker was from the Association of Computing Machinery, and the chat was something about the challenges of creating interfaces between very formal and precise computers and very informal and imprecise humans. Yada yada. You know, the typical computer nerd stuff. Anyways, after we split up, everyone went their separate ways depending on where they were parked. I was thirsty, so I ducked into a building that had a water fountain. When I exited the building, less than a minute later, I walked right into them. 4 orbs, floating silently and motionless. They floated about 2 meters above the ground, about 2 meters apart from each other, and were initially about 4 or 5 meters in front of me. The orbs had 2 identifiable parts, an inner glowing part, perhaps the size of a softball, and an outer shell, perhaps the size of a basketball. The inner part was just light, but the outer part had a noticeable texture. I think the best way to describe the outer shell's surface would be like a Fresnel lens, like the kind that lighthouses use. made of a textured glass or acrylic or some other semi-transparent material. I can't say whether the inner orbs were green and the outer shell was clear, or if the inner orb was white and the outer shell was green. Either way, the final product was pure green light being emitted. After about 1 to 2 seconds of sitting motionless, they started accelerating to my right, which would be due north. They moved in perfect sync and accelerated at a constant rate, still making absolutely no sound. I don't know the rate of acceleration, but it only took about 5 or 6 seconds for them to be moving so fast that they were just a blur. As for possible logical explanations, the only thing I can think of was that the water I drank had something in it that caused a hallucination. It's a long shot, as no other evidence points in that direction, but I'm grasping at straws to explain this. Anyways, thanks for listening, and thanks for keeping an open mind. Hi, Raven. You may or may not recall, but as I mentioned in previous submissions, I have had many unusual experiences that would give you content for months. Fortunately, I found a bit more time to put pen to paper and submit another one of my unusual encounters for your channel. I struggle to characterize this particular event. It's definitely not a glitch or time slip. It could be paranormal, but I'm honestly unsure if it's even that. So, just like the other stories I've shared and so eloquently narrated, you always seem to find the perfect way to fit them in with other stories in your collections. I trust you'll figure out how best to classify this one too. This experience is one that I've never experienced before, or experienced since. I've also never heard or read about anyone else having this exact experience either. It's one that kind of freaked me out. It was so unsettling that I don't think I would welcome this kind of encounter again. In one of my previous submissions, which was partially paranormal and partially a glitch, I mentioned that my mother died unexpectedly on July 1st, 2019. Since her passing, I've had several things happen to let me know that her spirit continues to visit and linger among the living, even though she has passed. So, on June 30th, 2021, I woke up what I consider to be rather late. It was almost 9 in the morning. No one was awake yet in the house. I had on my well-worn pale pink pajamas with navy blue polka dots. As I awoke, I was still a bit groggy, but not so tired that I was incoherent or oblivious to my surroundings. I got out of bed, walked along the upstairs hallway, and took a left to head downstairs into the kitchen to put on a fresh pot of coffee. As I took the first 6 steps down the stairwell and onto the landing, something told me to look in the mirror. There are 2 mirrors on this landing before descending the remaining 8 stairs leading to the main level of the house. So, the mirrors in the landing are not ones I typically use to apply makeup, style my hair, or get myself ready for work. In fact, I virtually never look at myself in these mirrors. Placing these mirrors in this particular area was done strategically. You see, I was following a widely known interior design principle. The design principle suggests that by placing mirrors in certain areas of your home, it can create an illusion of a larger or wider space. It's also a way where mirrors can reflect natural light, while making the area appear brighter. Knowing this design principle, I strategically placed 2 large mirrors on the wall of the stairwell landing. So, on this particular morning, as I descended the stairs, I was urged by a thought that told me to stop on the landing and look into the mirror. In that moment, I was aware that this odd thought wasn't my own. I took a momentary pause and tried to process this strange musing. You see, I never look at myself in these mirrors. I certainly didn't want to see the train wreck that I looked like after rolling out of bed. Honestly, how many people want to catch a glimpse of themselves in the mirror immediately after getting out of bed, or before brushing their hair, washing their face, brushing their teeth, or having a much-needed caffeine fix. Definitely not me. I didn't have to look in the mirror to realize I was a hot mess. Did I really want to see such a sight? No, I didn't. In that moment, I was aware that looking in the mirror was for certain not my idea. But this peculiar thought seemed persistent. It took a hold of me and piqued my curiosity. So I complied. Once I descended the first 6 steps, I looked into the first mirror closest to where I had planted my feet firmly on the landing. When I looked up, I didn't see what I was expecting to see, my disheveled bedhead reflection. Instead, I saw my mother. It was a reflection of her in her younger years. I saw her dark chocolate brown eyes, olive complexion, a smaller nose than my own, full lips, and her short, thick, naturally loose and wavy chestnut brown hair that somehow always looked naturally perfect without being overdone. This was unlike the forcible way I typically coax my own hair into a compliant, coiffed, straight style. It felt as if minutes passed. I just stood there staring at what this mirror was reflecting back at me. I intently studied the image before me. I took it all in while simultaneously trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I was trying to determine whether or not it was actually me. Perhaps I just never realized how much I looked like my mother. Was I just noticing this for the very first time? It wasn't long before I dismissed that thought when I wondered what happened to my familiar light green eyes. Where was my pale complexion, long and rather thin lips, straight nose, and my forcibly straight light brown hair? Where were these familiar features that should be reflecting back at me? As I stood there taking in this reflected image, I was completely dumbfounded. My feet felt frozen in place. I continued to study the image looking back at me, and I noticed that my reflection was wearing the same pale pink pajamas with the navy blue polka dots. It didn't matter though. The image reflecting back at me was 100% not me, regardless if it had on the same pajamas. There was no question about it. It was clearly my mother. She was 100% a completely separate entity from me. She was looking directly at me and not reflecting back my gestures or movements. I knew in that moment that it was really her. It was definitely my mother and not my own reflection with similar facial features as hers. Once my brain seemed to process and reconcile this information, I instantly became totally freaked out. I bolted down the remaining 8 steps while holding on to the railing. I happened to be oddly aware in that instant that I was wearing socks. As I raced down the stairs in shock and fear at what I had just seen, I didn't want to fall down the wooden steps. I turned sharply to the right and ran right into the bathroom on the main floor. This bathroom is to the right of the staircase and in between the kitchen and open living area. I immediately flicked the lights on and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. With a sigh of relief and my heart pounding, I saw me. I saw my own reflection, which was vastly different than what I had just witnessed in the mirror on the staircase. In this mirror, I saw my messy, straight light brown hair, my familiar pale complexion, straight nose, green-colored eyes, and long, thin lips. I looked away momentarily and then looked in the mirror once again for a bit longer this time. I studied my reflection, taking in all the details. This reflection was definitely my own. It looked nothing like my mother's reflection, not even a little bit. I tried hard to see what I had seen just moments earlier. I tried to see if maybe I saw similarities between the two of us. Was I imagining things? Did I happen to catch a glimpse of myself at an angle where I saw my mother's image in myself on the landing? I mean, that wouldn't be all that far-fetched. That would seem completely plausible. After all, I am her daughter and she is my mother. Maybe I never noticed the subtle similarities between the two of us before. As I stood in the bathroom studying my reflection and not observing even a trace of similarities, I suddenly remembered that searing feeling I had just a few seconds earlier. The reflection on the landing was clearly a separate entity from me. I was certain of that. That's why I had that momentary freakout and ran down the stairs. After a few minutes, I regained my composure. I was trying to make sense of what just happened while I put a pot of coffee on. While waiting for the coffee to brew, I slowly ascended the stairs. I had to have one more look in the mirror on the landing. Was Mom still there? I had to find out. Once I reached the landing, I hesitated a bit, but I forced myself to look into the same mirror again. This time, I saw just me. It was my complete reflection looking right back at me. It wasn't my mom's face. It was my reflection just as I had seen it moments earlier in the downstairs bathroom. It took a little while for me to process this strange experience and make sense as to why I saw my mother's face in the mirror. Later on that day, I called my sister and told her about this unusual incident. You see, that's when it dawned on me. This happened on June 30th, 2021. The next day, July 1st, 2021, was the second anniversary of her passing. With my crazy schedule and the hectic pace of managing work, family, and countless responsibilities, I almost forgot the anniversary of her death. The anniversary of her death wasn't at the forefront of my mind, at least in that moment. I hope that she understood that I didn't mean to forget her, I just got busy is all. I wrote this experience in a journal entry, as my childhood friend urged me to write all of my strange and unusual experiences down. She told me that I could always read and revisit them in an attempt to make sense of their meaning. She was right. In revisiting this experience several years later, I think my mom showed up in the mirror as a reminder to let me know that, although she is gone from this realm, she's not gone from existence. Her showing up in my mirror wasn't just her way of telling me not to forget that it was the anniversary of her passing. I think it was her way of letting me know that she is always around, and I can take comfort in knowing that she has not forgotten about me either. For context, it was the year 2017. We were in the base room of a then boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend. It was the first time I've ever had one of these pendulums used on me, and to make it all worse, the moment he pulled it out, he didn't fail to mention it was his ex's. The woman of his children's pendulum that he had bought for her. However, once they broke up and she had moved all of her belongings out of his house, yes, unfortunately the same house this basement story takes place, but that's not really relevant. I was totally indecisive to even proceed with whatever it was he wanted to do. I knew it was most likely a bad idea, but at the time I guess he convinced me and told me to go ahead with a clear mind. So we relaxed and he held this pendulum, which was amethyst if anyone's wondering. He held it unraveled over my right palm, arm stretched out in front of me, so that my forearm was facing upwards. He then asked a few questions, with an unfluctuating hand holding a chain, from which the pendulum hung. There wasn't an inch of movement, not forward, not sideways, nothing. He then continued to move the pendulum up my forearm, my right arm, and for whatever reason this burning sensation in my arm starting at my wrist continued as he dangled the pendulum up my arm, and stopped right before the cubital fossa, like the elbow area. At the start of this burning sensation, I started to scream and went to go to move my arm, but he quickly told me no and to leave my arm open. I told him that it had felt as if someone was cutting my arm open. When he got the pendulum to my Sheladon, it had felt as if someone with an extensive hand grabbed a hold of my forearm, at which time I let out a loud, "Ow, ouch!" and again explained my experience. But there was nothing. Nobody clenching their hand over my arm. All we saw was the pendulum hovering over my skin, and as he glided it gently over my skin, and ran it back down my arm, a sizable scratch appeared before my eyes. It took up my whole forearm just right down the middle. Once back at the palm of my hand, the sound of a snap or pop happened. Upon closer inspection, the pendulum had cracked right over my palm. It had freaked the both of us out completely. He had wrapped the pendulum up and put it away after reviewing it a few times. The crack was never there before. It was new, and his ex had never used it or played with it. This left me completely inarticulate. The next morning, not only was there an extensive scratch down my forearm, but a massive handprint wrapped around my arm. Too big to be mine, or even my ex-boyfriend's. I'm a tiny girl, so it was pretty noticeable. I'm curious, has anyone have any clue as to what might have happened here? Was it a sign, or maybe something trying to warn me? Has anything like this happened to anyone else before? Should I continue looking into this, or just let this one go? I don't exactly know what happened in this basement, but please note there were no drugs or alcohol, and mental illness does not run in my family. This appeared not only in front of my eyes, but the eyes of my ex-boyfriend, too. So that, my friends, was a collection of some strange and scary stories. Stories that are both strange and scary, or they are strange or they are scary. However you want to look at it, it's a collection of true scary stories from listeners that meet one of those two criteria. And that's how I do these. Hopefully you all enjoyed this collection of stories. If you did, please do hit that like button on the video. You can also subscribe to the channel if you're new, I'd really appreciate that. Or if you're feeling bold, go down below the video and leave me a comment with your thoughts, which story was your favorite. And since I'm heading to the gas station, let me know what I can get for you from the candy shelf if you want something. Or anything else if they have it. Also want to say you can listen to the podcast on other platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Pandora, any of those. You can also join Patreon memberships, get early access to content like this, and yeah. All that said, hope you know that you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Until next time, my friends, much love and sleep well.